How's it going, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of This Ain't Fake Brother. Myself and Kenny Murphy are going to be with you for quite some time here. We decided to do the show on a Thursday because of the network numbers being out. We're also going to go over Hell in a Cell, Raw. We don't have a classic review this week because we had some issues with notes, but at least we're going to give you a
classic failures, really, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But we do have a little heads up anyway, so you can watch it. We'll have something next week for it. But I'm as disappointed as anybody else can, because this is one hell of a show.
Well, here's what we'll do, as we discussed, we'll do our little recap next week, but we will also go back and watch the Tank Abbott and Al Green match in its entirety and do our notes up.
Yeah, that's what it's really about. Is
if there's anything else that you feel is absolutely key, we can watch that again. Maybe the main event, just for notes purposes, but
okay.
I'm not doing that 3 hours again.
Yeah, it was tough, to say the least, but we'll... Yeah, we're going to have that for next week. So that's WCW Super Brawl 2000. Go watch it on the network. It's fascinating. Just even the music on the network that they had to put in, especially in the James Brown segment.
Oh, it's James
because like...
I was sitting there watching that segment thinking, Neil is probably loving this.
First off, I'd seen it before, but...
I'm sure you had, but I just felt like it was your thing.
Doing it without... James Brown actually there, without James Brown's music actually there, even though you could still hear it silently in the background.
Yeah. Hear it silently.
It just made it so much more hard to take. But anyway, we'll do basically all the news in WWE. We've got Hell in a Cell and we've got Monday Night Raw from this week. But we'll start off with the news, podcast review as well. Start off with the news, however, and the network numbers came out today. It was the first time that they've released numbers since going worldwide. Just a question before we even start, something I want clarification on.
Yeah.
A lot of people were expecting more from this for various reasons, but one of the things pointed out when it came to the international expansion was that it's available in 170 territories. Now that seems, I just
170 countries they're claiming, but yeah,
but I don't understand how it's available in 170 countries.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what these 170 countries that would be interested are. I do have a statistic for you though.
Go for it.
Before I get into my whole big rant, and it will be a rant, and you'll need to give me the floor for a good solid 10 minutes here.
You're saying 10 minutes, and if you go 10 minutes, I'll be proud of you.
Okay. The way there are, as you said, basically they announced today they have 731,000 total subscribers. You and I did our predictions a few weeks ago, and I went 700, and I believe you went 850. Didn't you?
I did, yeah.
And you were still on the low end of things. People were thinking 950. You know what I mean? Yeah. But they have 731,000 total subscribers. 703,000 of those are officially domestic, so they're US subscribers. Of course, realistically, the chances are that maybe 400,000 are domestic and 300 of those were already international. But of the 170 countries that they opened up to, okay, and they got 28,000 subscribers out of them, yeah? Mm-hmm. One of the stats that was going around today was that they had already over 10,000 in Canada in the first week, which is one of those 170 countries, okay? So I believe Canada landed somewhere around 13 or 14,000, means it was then 14,000 subscribers from 169 countries, okay? Yeah. Which worked out at 82 people in each country had interest in the network.
See, I did that calculation as well. And that's what made me sit down and rethink, surely it's not actually 170 countries.
No, well, I think the bigger thing is that anybody who wanted it and didn't live in the United States had it already. Basically.
Yeah, and you had thought that would be the case more than I did. I thought that people would wait for it to be easier. I've got a lot of friends who would be very interested in the network, but they wanted to hold out to a point that they could just click a button and it would work, rather than go through the rigmarole that you and I and other people have gone through.
I totally see that, but my mindset was, because I always when I was frequenting the Wrestling Observer board, which I don't do so much now because it's fairly redundant, but I got into some flame wars with people because one of my reasons that I believe this network wasn't going to be a success was because I believe that people, once you start skewing over 40, people are more averse to new technology. And that's not to say nobody over 40, because I know plenty of people, who are in their 40s, 50s who'd use Netflix or that kind of thing. But it skews, it's harder and harder, and you're getting less and less take up once you get past that age, I think. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And which means the majority of your people who are going to be interested are going to be probably in their 20s, 30s, teens, you know what I mean? And those kinds of people don't find it difficult to circumvent, the geo-blocking, you know what I mean? I don't know anybody who has Netflix who doesn't watch US Netflix.
It is easier, though.
Do you know what I mean?
It's easier.
Well, there you go.
No, it's
slightly easier, yeah.
It's easy to get the American WWE
Well, because of the app, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not. But a lot of people don't. I mean, you and I are talking because we both use consoles to watch it, but I think, as I understand it, most people seem to be using iPads and
Jim Ross
computers
anyway,
to watch. Yeah, no, but you do hear that. You know what I mean? I still find that so strange. I don't understand why anyone would ever watch, something on a 7 or 10 inch screen. Like we were talking about the Liverpool game on Tuesday night, and I watched that on a 14-inch screen. And I'm just like, this is my childhood all over again. Like,
yeah,
it's
go. When you have to do that when you're streaming football, it's go away heat.
It's turgid, like, yeah, it's go away. Okay, so to come on to my rant. The numbers came out today. They have 731,000 total subscribers, 703 domestic, 28,000 international. A couple of key points on that. In the 3-month period, so this is from June 30th to September 30th officially, that they report a month behind. They gained and lost about 300,000 domestic subscribers. So that is to say, about 300,000 new subscribers came on board, and about 300,000 walked away. Close enough to those figures. So they've now had about 1 million people try it in the States, and they have 700,000 on board right now. So it seems as though everybody who's going to try this network has tried it, and plenty of people. Their churn rate is, it's close to 50% now of the people who've tried this network have walked away in the time, which is a really bad sign. They are now instituting the $9.99 price point, which was up until now it was $9.99 with a 6-month guarantee that you're going to subscribe for 6 months, or you could pay $12.99 to get it for one individual month. Only 23,000 people took them up on their $12.99 for 1 month offer, and what most people did was what most people had been doing, which was subscribe for the 6 months, block the payment to the WWE on your PayPal account, and you just get out scot-free. So they've basically thrown up their hands and said, okay, we can't stop people doing that. We've no way of kind of chasing them for the money, so fine, you can have it for $9.99. This is huge. I think it may be a mistake. I understand that they're in a business where that's the norm. Netflix does it, Hulu does it, so they wanted to kind of match up with those businesses. But you're now in a situation where you can pay about $70 a year. I worked it out to be to get all the pay-per-views. Okay, it's not even 120, because what you can do is, and someone very saintly pointed out this on the internet. For example, you subscribe to the network on the day of WrestleMania, you also get Extreme Rules. You hold off to the day of Payback, you also get Money in the Bank. So you're going to get, for the people who just want it for the pay-per-views, they can get the pay-per-views for $70 a year after previously paying $720. Okay, so that's one thing. And I sat and I looked at this and I thought, why is this network a failure? Okay, they need about double what they have now for it to become anywhere close to being a success. Okay, there are a number of reasons. I think there are things like the archive content has been a disaster. They started adding stuff, they seem to be adding it in sequence, and then they would just stop. Like, for example, the Raws were being added 5 Raws a week, every week, and then nothing.
Sure. So
that's one thing. The archive content is insufficient, and it's not been added correctly, and that's pissed people off. And there are functional problems with it. I think the fact that there's no resume feature, the fact that, you and I use the fast forward on the consoles, but anybody who uses it on a computer or a Mac, or not a Mac, a tablet rather, has spoken about the problems using their scroller bar. It's very.
I use it on the. I have a laptop, my old laptop that we were talking about before the show started. I've that hooked up essentially to my TV upstairs, so I use it as a digibox because I have Sky Go on. So I also use it for a network upstairs.
Yeah.
And anytime I have to scan my way through something upstairs, it's a disgrace. And not only that, but, and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the features on the laptop version of the scroller bar is that it has the match points.
Yeah, some of them, yeah.
So if you scroll over something by mistake, you can actually get a spoiler.
Yeah.
And I don't think you can turn that feature off.
No, you can't. So there's a number of issues, but the biggest thing, and it's the thing that nobody wants to kind of really acknowledge, is just that they have an ice-cold product, and it's getting colder and colder, and the pay-per-views mean nothing, so there's no value to the product they're putting on. And when I looked at this, I wanted to kind of go back and look and see, does the evidence of the past 10, 15 years bear this out? How has the company been doing? And it's very easy when you look at, say, the WWE in 2001 to 2002, or say 1990 to 1992, to see when their business was tumbled off a cliff. You know what I mean? They went from the Hogan era. They were gigantic. They were making money hand over fist, and then the steroid scandal hit. Hogan left, and they immediately, their houses were half, the pay-per-view buy rates tumbled. You know what I mean? Austin turned heel, WWE shut down.
It's also worth noting that when that Hogan decline happened, that a lot more houses were had pay-per-view than when they were doing well with Hogan.
Yeah, and they were still doing less.
Exactly.
So I took a look, and I took kind of a longer term look, and for me the issue is it comes back to one person, that's Vince, and it always has to come back to Vince. I looked at the ways in which he's damaged the company of late, and I think they overplayed their hand in the TV negotiations. We all know that now. It's come out that they had negotiations with several networks, but when they came to the table, they said, we're looking for this money, which was kind of 3-4 times what they were getting. And a lot of companies were just like, well, listen, if you're going to be looking for ridiculous money, forget it, okay? So that's one way. But then you also have to look at the product itself. And I think there's a recurring trend of guys, the audience getting behind a star and the company cutting them off at the legs because you weren't the one we planned on. So we might look at you later on, but right now, this is our guy. We're seeing it right now with the Wood and Roman Reigns promo on Raw, which is building up him for WrestleMania, even though he's cold and Ambrose is hot, okay? If you look at it in 2008 around the Royal Rumble, Jeff Hardy was as hot as he was ever going to be. They needed to pull the trigger. He could have made the money. He made the money at that Royal Rumble. He could have made even more money at WrestleMania.
Yep.
But they had him lose because the bigger plan was Orton had to lose to Hunter at WrestleMania. You had the following year, you had Randy Orton got incredibly hot. People forget this.
January.
Because, when he punted Vince on Raw,
yep.
Again, he was in that spot where he can make money, but he had to be squashed by Shane McMahon.
On No Way Out.
Yeah.
Then
you had the Daniel Bryan saga of a year ago where at SummerSlam they had this launching point and they actually went with it, and he was a superstar for maybe 2 minutes. Then they just had him fail over and over and over again till they got to this situation where the audience, which now contains a much stronger smart quote unquote element, just basically rejected everything they were given and said, "Give us Daniel Bryan."
Yeah.
But the way they presented him, to me, his legs were already cut off enough to where he's never going to mean anything beyond the hardcore level.
Sure.
And his chance over.
It's incredible that because of Punk leaving and Dave not working out the way they wanted it to, that they had to revert back to Daniel.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the examples you gave, like Randy and Jeff, there wasn't that kind of... The stars didn't align in such a way where they eventually had to go with them after they cut the legs out. The thing about Bryan is, when people talk about the idea that the fans made it happen, people forget that it was reluctant and stuff like that, but your point that they'd already actually killed it before that. Yeah, it's incredible. And that's a very extreme example that's never happened before, and you wouldn't see it happening again.
No. Well, we'll see how this run goes. But then that brings me to Dean Ambrose now, who turned in May and hasn't won a match on pay-per-view since, and he had a real chance to underscore him and make him a star on Sunday. And, of course, they cut his legs off, which is just what they want to do. So I looked at how does this impact on the product, okay? I looked at pay-per-views, and pay-per-views, it's very complex to go through all the numbers and details I have with ratings, which I'll get to. But pay-per-views, in 2004, there was one show that went under 200,000 domestic buys, okay? 2004.
Yeah.
And it was considered like an appalling happening that they went under 200,000.
Yes.
In 2013, the only shows they had that went over 200,000 in domestic were the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. So in a decade, their paying customer base was cut by about 60% when it comes to pay-per-views. That's huge. Do you know what I mean? They ran off 60%. Okay. Then I took a look at the ratings, and I've got several little points along.
Got to cut you off for a sec.
Okay.
Just this is all true, but is the reason perhaps that they dropped that many, regardless of how good the product is, that people opted for buying MMA shows instead? Especially, like, I know it's not maintained that, but the idea that in from 2006 onwards, especially through 2010, 2011, that people said, well, here's my $60 budget, it's going to go here instead of there. Would it have mattered what they did?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. Because people gravitated to MMA and left pro wrestling not just because they liked MMA, but because they didn't like what pro wrestling became. That's why when you hear people like a Jim Ross or Steve Austin, or Steve Austin's the perfect example. Before he got the network about a month ago, I remember him talking about Dolph Ziggler and talking about him being world champion, and he was world champion like 18 months previously, and Austin had no idea because he didn't watch the product. Yet he would talk on all of his shows about how he wouldn't miss a UFC pay-per-view, and it's the context. The product that they present is it's a circus, and it's more 70% of the show is played for comedy, and 100% of the announcing is played for comedy. There's nothing to sink your teeth into, and that's borne out in the ratings most of all. In October of 1998, they were averaging a 5.0, okay, which is about 7 million viewers.
Yeah.
October of 2001, they were averaging 4.1.
Mm-hmm.
October of 2004, and the key here is they're not falling off a cliff. It's gradual. People are just going, fuck this.
Yeah.
October of 2004, they were at a 3.5. October of 2007, they were at a 3.3. October of 2010, they were at a 3.1. October last year, they were at a 3.0. October this year, we're at about 2.7, 2.8.
Now, it must be said that the last 2 years, the number gets stretched.
Yeah, but there's a... It went from... In 2010, it went from 3.1 to 3.0 in 2013. But in the last year, we've lost more than we did in those 3 years. So it's not the 3 hours.
Now, when it comes to brass tacks in terms of the actual viewership, you have to remember more people have cable now. So the percentage is less, but the viewership...
The viewership, it's still, but because the losses are so huge, you're still way down in viewers.
Okay.
In the summer of 2005, I went through 3-month periods here, July, August, September. They were averaging about 5.3 million viewers, and they peaked at 5.6. Okay. Summer of 2008, they were averaging 4.8 million viewers, peaked about 5.2. Summer of 2011, they were averaging 4.7 million, and they would peak around 5. And now they're averaging about 3.7 million, and they've peaked about 4.1 earlier in the summer. So what that says is, between October of 2011 and now, they've ran off 1 million of their viewers. They've ran off about 23% of people who watch the show, and over a 10-year period, they've ran off close to half, and they've ran off half people who pay for the product.
That's
so
incredible.
This network isn't a success because the product they present is at the whim of a senile OAP, and that's, no one wants to talk about it, but you have somebody, we saw the video today, it's quite sad. You have Vince there, he's, what is he, 75, 85 years of age now.
Yeah, come on, you're completely, look, everything you're saying is gospel, so there's no point in hyperbole ruining your point.
Genuinely, you have Vince who is...
Explain this video to people. It's about basically the $9.99, right? So he's there, he's red-eyed, he's small.
So old.
He looks old, and he basically tells everybody that there's no longer a 6-month commitment, and that the month of November, you're going to get the network for free if you sign up. So your first month is free if you sign up if you're a new signee in November. And then he does a really, really timid yes chant, which I actually can't believe that he did by his own accord.
Like, it's so, because if anyone's ever seen the S chant, you put your fingers over your head, you know what I mean? Like, Vince just raises his fingers barely above his waist.
Yeah. He's pointing at his nipple.
But the point is that the guy is clearly... Okay, the Attitude Era happened in spite of Vince, not because of him. People forget that.
Very good.
And when was the last time there was... Where's his creative genius? It doesn't exist anymore. And he is a cranky old man, and the industry has totally passed him by. And for him, because he has his money made now, it's not like even 97, 98 when he was still touch and go.
He had to fight for it then.
He had to fight for it then. It didn't matter to him. It mattered to him then that he had to make money to survive. He had to make money to keep his company going. Right now, this company is solid enough that they can afford to basically set fire to $250 million, which is what they've done with this network, and still be solvent. And he has 300 and odd million packed away in a personal bank account, so he's fine. So he can afford to take a vanity project like a Roman Reigns or any of these guys that he pushes based on luck, and even though they're not getting over, if it's more important to his ego to shove something down your throat, then he will do that. And that's what the network is a prime example of that. Anybody with a brain knew this wasn't going to work. I mean, it was just so apparent. There was no way you could drill the numbers and think this will work. There really wasn't. It was never, ever, ever, ever going to work. But he went ahead with it because it's more important to prove for Vince to prove that Vince is right.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But that's so borne out in his creative. And And also, he's so erratic with his decision making. He does not understand how to make a star. When he does decide he wants to make a star, he picks somebody. He fixates on one thing, which is 9 times out of 10 their look. And he drives, and now he's created this counterculture fan base, and it's going to hit. The first person to hit was John Cena, who people knew they're shoving this guy down our throats because he's got a big physique and he's got some charisma and he's decent on the mic. They're just pushing him, so we're going to push back. Fuck you, Vince.
Yeah.
It happened last year with Daniel Bryan. Everybody knew this guy wasn't, what they wanted. It happens with Dolph Ziggler on a weekly basis. People see him losing. They know this guy is more talented than the people they're pushing, but he doesn't have the look that they want or the size they want or whatever it is.
When Punk got hot in 2011, it was literally his gimmick to go against that and feed off that mentality.
That was another thing I was going to say. We always, I sometimes hate this. I was looking at this and I was thinking I'm going to be burying Vince here. And I sometimes hate doing that because I think of all the phenomenal moments that pro wrestling has given us, and most of them have come through WWE.
Yeah.
And so they've come through his filter, you know what I mean? But then I came to the conclusion, I realised that the best things of the last decade have come in spite of him.
I was going to mention that.
And that's really sad.
I'm sure you've got points too, but this has been weighing on my mind since you brought up his creative lacking. For those of you who want to think, the Jericho Shawn, Jericho Ray, Jericho Punk, Shawn Taker trips, for those of you who want to think that those great builds and great matches, what you must, and Punk Cena, especially Money in the Bank era, 2011, you have to remember that this was the idea of the people involved in it. And if you want a counter example to that, look at what Brett and Vince's real life had laid out on a plate. And because it was Vince involved, that is the absolute antithesis of Vince McMahon and what he thinks is the right thing to do.
And it's really unfortunate. And the conclusion I came to was the industry as a whole and the product that, let's be honest, I mean, we listen to pro wrestling podcasts all the time and we recap them in the show every week, and the tone is the exact same as you'll hear from me every time we discuss Raw. It's just people saying, it's kind of shit, but this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong. And I have come to this conclusion that it will never change until Vince either is in a debilitating mental or physical state, or he's dead. And I hate to say that, but I honestly think those would be the best things for pro wrestling right now, because he's such a handicap to... He makes... With Vince at the tiller, the business end of it, bar the network, I suppose, will run relatively steady. But the creative is just going to be a mess, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's a shame, but... we will talk about Hell in a Cell later. I just sat there and thought to myself, in December 1997, they had The Rock and Steve Austin on a pay-per-view. Degeneration X was called, in your house. And they kind of wanted to light up Rocky as a heel, but they needed to protect Austin as a babyface. And they asked, they'd planned for Austin to lose by kind of getting fucked by the Nation of Domination, which... probably would have been okay, but Austin felt at the time, no, I'm too hot. That would fuck with me. I'm not doing a job. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And I just thought to myself, Vince, went with that. Vince said, yeah, fair enough, because Vince, Austin wasn't a big enough star then that Vince couldn't have kiboshed it and said, no, you're going out there and doing the job. Austin wasn't going to walk away, so Vince could have forced his hand, but Vince accepted it because he knew pro wrestling booking 101. I've got this babyface. He's getting over. He thinks I'm going to cut him off at the legs if I do this. He's probably right. Okay, we'll protect you. We won't have you do the job. Okay. What do you think Steve Austin would have said if Vince said, well, okay, here's something. You won't do a clean job. You won't do a job if the Nation interfere. How about the lights go out, right? And we'll play a hologram, right? And you're going to be really distracted by this hologram. You'll completely ignore your opponent, and then you're going to get beaten. You're going to get hit with a finish from behind by someone. You're not going to kick out of it. It's only going to be one finish. And
it actually wasn't even a finish.
And you're going to get beaten.
Sure.
I think Austin probably would have quit, you know what I mean? And it's just this bullshit. And
he mentions a lot that when he's backstage, he feels people are walking on eggshells, and he says that someone needs to, stand up. And I think the problem comes from the top. All you have to do is look at John Cena's verbiage.
Yeah.
And look, listen, I think John Cena is a fucking hell of a team player to let Brock do what Brock was meant to do to Bryan.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, that works both ways.
Yeah.
It means that Cena is very, very much a compliant professional.
Oh, he completely is, yeah.
And if Cena isn't going to make much of a song and dance about himself, who else is going to do that? Because John Cena is so far head and tails above everybody else. Who else in the company is going to say, well, I'm going to stand up for
we know
myself?
Randy does.
We know Randy does, but then again...
And that's why you notice you'll never see Randy Orton out there with a fucking blow-up doll like they had Ambrose the other week.
No.
We'll talk about that when we get to it. But that's where we're at, and I think that they have to accept that their network is never going to be successful in its current incarnation. They could have, right? They could have launched... They could have kept pay-per-views where they were and launched an in-demand service with all the stuff that's on there now, including NXT and Main Event, all the archives, added archival content, kind of more of a steady pace than they've done now, and say put the pay-per-views on 30 days later. And I would say they probably would have gotten 300,000-400,000 subscribers without too much difficulty, and they would still have all the pay-per-view revenue, and they would right now be a more profitable company than they've ever been.
Yeah, because the people will be paying $70 a month instead of $60. Because people buying pay-per-view. So listen, everything you said is completely true, and the idea of the product getting hotter being the only organic way that the network will grow it's pretty sacrosanct. But I think a huge issue was the advertising of the network. I felt that they got complacent and pissed off about the idea that this was such a sweet deal, because to them they were thinking
remember that Raw where they had Jerry Lawler shout at us?
Yeah. Well, this is what I'm saying. So they thought to themselves, we are allowing everybody to pay a sixth or a fifth of what they were paying for pay-per-views, and they're getting pay-per-views and everything else, but they're not smart enough to do it. So we're going to have to create a chant. We're going to have to literally play it into as many segments. And it was, I just think they could have advertised it so much better.
Have
Steve Austin sitting on his couch and going, hell, I've got a 6-pack of beer. I've got a pack of snacks. Go about all these other things and say, I got these with the money I saved because I'm watching the pay-per-view on the WWE Network.
There you go.
Come on.
I don't disagree that their advertising was ineffective. However, I would just come back to the fact that they've had about, I think it's 453,000 people who have tried it and left. To me, that tells me that the bigger problem is just the content. But I think maybe it could be maybe there could be another 50,000 based on what you're saying, but it's still nothing that will get them over the line. Do you know what I mean?
The UK network has been delayed. They were going to make an announcement on the 1st, which is Saturday, coming. What is the hold up here? It's there's talk of like a blackout during the pay-per-view. Sky signed a new...
People, okay, I need to cut this off.
Sky did sign a new pay-per-view deal with them last year.
Okay. I think this is like an internet message board thing that's taken on a life of its own. Okay. When WWE negotiated their deal with Sky for this coming year, they had them over the barrel because BT wanted to take WWE on, because they do bring a very loyal audience, which we discussed. They bring a loyal audience, it's an ever declining audience. So one of the things that they arranged was similar to the US. Their pay-per-views would no longer be on free television. They would all be pay-per-view, which meant you had the option of either buying the pay-per-view or getting it much cheaper on the network. However, some people have kind of got this theory that the pay-per-views are not going to be featured on the UK version of the network. That's not the case at all. They absolutely are. It is going to be an over-the-top, by the way. It's going to be an online service. That was mentioned twice today. So it'll start in the next few weeks, I believe.
I just wonder what the delay was.
Maybe
I thought it had to be Sky.
Their new deal didn't kick into. Or I would say they probably wanted to put it on TV because the
way it went to Canada.
Yeah, although then again, given that we're now hearing the international subscribers,
See,
I think I was thinking all along, the UK, the second biggest market, maybe they can rely on 50 or 100,000, but given what we now know about the international subscribers, I think it's going to be very small, because if it's another 10,000, I think they're doing well.
Okay. Crazy Billy Jack Haynes came out this week, and he wants to sue WWE basically under the grounds of getting brain damage and no compensation for it. Now, I'm not going to dispute he has brain damage, if anybody who's ever watched a Billy Jack Haynes shoot interview, but this isn't publicity they want. He has never showered himself in kind of in kind of like a glory of being a sane person. So what do you think of this? Do you think anything will come from it?
Absolutely not. I think that if you look at it, I mean, the complaint is basically they were mean employers.
Yeah.
Okay, and this kind of thing, this kind of thing in general, really fucking pisses me off. Okay, Neil. Billy Jack Haynes is a grown man. He was a grown man then. He was in his late 20s, early 30s. Okay.
Sure.
If in his lawsuit he alleges a number of things. He says when he was hurt, they didn't stop matches. Okay. If he was injured and he felt the match should have been stopped, did someone hold a gun to his head and make him keep wrestling? No. He also says that he was encouraged to use steroids. We know from the steroid trial in the 90s that no one was ever implicitly told use steroids. A lot of people were told and we even see Jim Ross and Beyond the Mat. What does he say to Tony Jones backstage? He says you need to get a bit bigger in the upper body. Okay, we all know what he's talking about. But look, he's basically saying you need to get bigger. Do it how you're going to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
No one told Billy Jack Haynes to use steroids. However, even if they did, he could say, "Fuck off! I'm not using steroids." There's nothing that pisses me off more, not just in wrestling, but in life in general, than people who won't take responsibility for the decisions that they made. Billy Jack, you chose to do those things for that 18-month period of your life. You did them for 6 years beforehand. You did them for years after you left. That's the reason you're the fucking mess that you are now. So go fuck yourself.
He's always been very pissed off. He was asked to stop wearing yellow as well.
Stop wearing yellow?
Yeah.
Oh, because of Hogan?
Yeah.
Did you ever hear the story about him and the TV taping in the early 90s?
Go ahead. I don't
fucking love the story.
This isn't WCW.
No, WWE, right? WWF rather. He spoke to somebody on the phone, and he believed it was Pat Patterson, who told him to come to the TV tapings for a tryout. They said they weren't going to fly him in because his money was tight because of this was around the time the steroid trial business was down. So he drove. It was like a 500-mile trip to the TV tape. He showed up, and they were like, "What are you here for?" And he was like, "I have a I have a tryout tonight," and no one had any idea what he was talking about. So he thought this was like a really mean-spirited thing on by Vince or Pat or someone, you know, because he's like, "I spoke to Pat," and he drove away. He was fucking furious for years.
Yeah.
And in the end, it turned out it was
brilliant.
Crush. Brian Adams doing his best Pat Patterson impersonation had I don't know if he'd called him up and just offered him a try. I don't know the circumstance of it, but it was a rib played by Crush. He was barely in the door, by the way, at that stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Late 1992. But yeah, that's the story. But listen, for people who don't know, Billy Jack Haynes is somebody who also said that Vince McMahon was David Benoit's father, not Chris, and that he had a hand in the killings. Did you not know about this? Yeah. It's just like, I mean, what the fuck? So I mean, there's just no credibility. So. Although, interestingly enough, apparently the lawyers feel like the fact that he said that statement could be a positive and not a negative for his case because it proves he's not right in the head. Yeah. Listen, the American legal system pisses me off something fierce.
Fastlane, Ken.
God,
Fastlane is the you know what? It's not. There's been worse.
They have a game by that name, isn't it?
Is that correct?
An app, like it's a John Cena driving game.
It's replacing Elimination Chamber, and they're moving Elimination Chamber to sometime later in the year. And people are thinking October maybe.
Because they're not going to have Brock, so they're not going to have a championship match, so they have nothing for the Chamber.
Yeah. And because there's only one belt, the contender for WrestleMania will be decided at the Rumble. So the Chamber is completely redundant.
Yes, in that month it is. I don't know how I feel about this. I really like the Chamber as part of the 3-month build to WrestleMania.
Sure.
I feel like it felt like part of the journey, and now if you've no Brock and Cena Reigns rather already has his title match, what's the Chamber going to be? Do you know what I mean? I mean, I guess
they could have Reigns put it up.
Yeah, which is what they're going to do, and it's kind of.
Well, it's not because there's going to be no Chamber.
Yeah, so
they could have done that. Is what I'm saying. They could have had Reigns put up his
in
title
the Chamber.
Shot. Yeah.
But then that makes the Rumble totally redundant. I don't like. I mean, they
Rumble's
have
gone. Rumble's done by that stage, so it's fine.
Yeah, but no, they've gotten into the habit of putting the shot up in February too often.
They put it into summer, it's too close to TLC. They put it at the end of the year, it's too close. Or sorry, it's too close to Money in the Bank. They put it at the end of the year, it's too close to TLC.
Here's what you do. Here's what you do, right? I always thought, back in the day, the King of the Ring, I always felt should have been, the winner of the King of the Ring goes to SummerSlam to challenge for the championship.
They did that once?
Brett and Owen, I think. And Brock as well.
Yeah.
But why don't you... The Payback pay-per-view is the one in June, I think. Or Battleground, was it this year? I don't know. Anyway, the June pay-per-view, you could have that be a Chamber match for the the championship match at SummerSlam. Then you've got Money in the Bank after that. So then you got your money. The briefcase holder could factor in, and you kind of got a few factors in play to build up SummerSlam. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
but I don't like it. It's you can't have it past SummerSlam because you've got the Cage show in October, and then you've got the TLC pay-per-view in December. So you kind of have to have it between WrestleMania and SummerSlam, and I don't know, it's awkward.
Sure.
It fit right where it was, you know.
I agree. Alberto Del Rio has an article. It was at Grantland. He's also doing a U-shoot with kayfabe commentaries as well.
He did a Fighting Spirit magazine interview.
The Fighting Spirit magazine interview said that, or he said more so in it, that there are people getting paid very little for certain triple shots in one day. And
what he said was, specifically, he said that somebody's brother told him that his brother worked a Superstars match.
Yeah.
I did a promo on Raw, a 2-segment Raw match, and then the dark match after Raw.
Right.
And got a $500 payoff.
So Bo told him this.
So it would, the theory is it's either one of the Usos, but that would make sense.
Doesn't make sense, no. Because if it's one of the Usos...
Yeah, so it's more likely to be Bray Wyatt, basically. Yeah. But I have to be honest. I mean...
you think it's probably hearsay?
I think there's probably degree bullshit in it.
Okay.
I just don't know that I believe anybody got $500 for a Raw taping.
He also sent the article that they're letting him cool off to bring him back. But
well, no, that was the idea.
He's upset them now by appearing.
Even what he said was Triple H. Well, he wouldn't name by name, but he said the executive, which was Triple H, Dave Meltzer confirmed it, said, "We'll let this cool off for a few months, then we'll bring you back." And Del Rio responded, "If you hang up this phone and I don't have a job, I'm never coming back." So. That's when then things got ugly from there, and there were legal threats and that kind of thing.
Well, that makes it good for his U-shoot. I think with good enough questions, he could be interesting because he seems like a very proud kind of guy. And
yes, absolutely. It's someone who would have some credibility.
Yeah, and it's not going to be like Brodus Clays. I think he'll answer questions. I think the fact he is Mexican back in Mexico wrestling, I think it probably
he can burn bridges.
Yeah, exactly.
One might say Jim Ross, who there's a fascinating thing going on there because. He acknowledged on Twitter when someone asked him that he's not allowed to have anyone from WWE on his show, which I think is awful, by the way. Just I know that Vince and him have their issues, but I just think for everything he meant to that company, the fact that they've banned, you know what I mean? But anyway, he's still... I listened to his Hell in a Cell review with Jason Powell this week, and he stopped himself short of saying something, and it's very clear he's doing that because he doesn't want to get in their bad books, and it's like... At this point, I don't know why does it just set fires at that bridge. I mean, I guess they're still selling this product, so
they do have somewhat of a relationship. I don't know if he was asked back. I think he'd go back.
Of course he'd go. He's. They say that wrestling fans are the ultimate beaten housewives. But Jim Ross is even worse than us. You know, he just keeps going back.
Taker, speaking of beaten up, was down at NXT this week.
Yeah,
very interesting.
Doing jobs for Mojo Rawley.
I think that's great. It's a tremendous use of him. I didn't hear if he actually did anything in the ring. I didn't know. I presume it's just a talkie seminar.
No,
but that's incredible. Some guy who's so closed off from the news and the internet world and has such a very... we don't know Taker's views on the business. We know his character, we know the kind of guy he is, but we don't really know the hard and fast of who he likes, what his advice would be. He never appears on shoots. So I think that's... And in terms of somebody who's been a success in the WWE and somebody who knows the WWE, it's kind of like probably the best guy they have to give that kind of advice, I'd say.
Absolutely. And, he's always been someone who's been viewed as somebody of high moral standing within the industry, which I think he can only be a positive example. And it was interesting to read in The Observer that this was very much a Paul Levesque thing. He wants more guys of that level to go down there and spend a week there. And so we've heard Steve talk a lot about wanting to go down as well. So I think he can only be a positive.
Yeah. Steve also ruled out doing WrestleMania 31. Chances of 32, real quick?
30%. If it's 30%, because if it's ever going to happen, it's going to have to be next year.
Finally, what I view as the biggest news of the week. This Randy Savage documentary that's coming out has been seen.
Yeah.
And supposedly the Stephanie stuff, it's very unclear how it's brought up.
I can tell you how.
Okay.
They bring up the fact that Triple H called him a dinosaur in an interview, and how Randy was hurt by this. And Randy's response was on one of his rap albums, where
It wasn't on the rap album.
Maybe it wasn't.
It was I saw the video when it came out. It was a video for VIP access to his website.
Okay, and he said, "I'll bitch slap your face and steal your girl."
Yep.
And Lanny Poffo then says, saying that was just adding gasoline to the fire. And then we have Dusty Rhodes, who says it's one of those things that we'll never know. So they do. It's interesting. I feel like they wanted to acknowledge it for the people who knew.
I don't see why they would. I really, really, unless it's completely false, I don't see why they would actually ever acknowledge it, even in a subtle way.
Yeah, I get that. I guess because
it for me it takes away. For me, it's the most firm. I just definitely don't see them doing it if there's truth to it.
I disagree because I don't think that. I think that the people who actually are on the ground floor, like that red-headed chap named Adam, who Sean thanked on Raw that on his last night, who are actually in the trenches making these documentaries. Vince or whoever aren't looking at this till it's a finished product, right? So I think that they're going to broach everything. I mean, we've seen, Paul Heyman says that they sat him down for 2 16-hour days of interviews for his DVD. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They cover everything, so I'm sure they tackled it. They probably said, I'm sure they probably said to a lot of people, I would doubt they went in and said, do you reckon the story about him and Stephanie's true?
Sure.
But what I can well believe is they said,
why was he never brought back?
Yes, and I'm sure several people said, well, there's the rumour about,
I can't even imagine people in
I'm
the
sure
company
Lanny
saying
Poffo
that.
would have said that. Or
Well, see, anytime Poffo's been asked about it, he always say, I never had the balls.
yeah, but that's the thing. He didn't. He could have said maybe it was the thing. Do you know what I mean? And it could be that if the Poffos were the first people interviewed and they brought it up, they say to Dusty Rhodes, listen, Lanny Poffo said it could have been this. What do you think? And by the time they got to the editing process, I guess I strongly doubt anyone sat Stephanie down or Hunter down or Vince down and said, listen, did this happen? I guess they felt like they needed a nod to it, but they didn't want to be overt about it. And I guess somehow it got to the final product. That's I
can't imagine Hunter being happy about whether it's true or not, be anything. If there is a slight tease of it on the DVD, I can't imagine it, one, not getting back to Hunter, and two, Hunter being okay with it.
I don't think whether it's true or not. I don't think that's impacted by whether it's true or not, though.
Really?
Because I know that's you're trying to deduce that it's not true because it's.
But even if it is true,
I think it is true.
Well, just the only thing that makes sense. All I know is that something happened.
Yeah, something definitely happened, and the timeline 1993, which had made Stephanie 17.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I checked that today. So I really firmly believe that something happened. Vince left the company, Randy left the company, and later found out that there'd been something with Randy. And I don't think it was till years later, because if you ever look, there was talk of Randy coming back in
96.
Yeah, so I think I concocted a story in my own head. You know the way there's like giant logic holes on Raw every week, and you try and explain them away, being the kind-hearted soul you are. I've decided that what happened was, when the thing with Triple H and Steph started, and Vince initially gave his blessing, but then put the kibosh on it, I feel like Stephanie probably said, well, I had a little something with Randy, and Vince got word of that and was very displeased, and that's why the ban came down.
Okay, and WWE Hell in a Cell.
Before we move on,
go ahead.
Does Randy Savage go into the Hell in a Cell?
Certainly not. Oh, was that the hologram?
That was him speaking in tongues. Does he go into the Hall of Fame in 2015?
That was I probably should touch on that. The main bulk of the DVD report wasn't solely dedicated to the Stephanie rumor. People are saying that it seems like a piece done as a prelude to him going in.
Only fitting.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm going to be there, and I'd fucking love it. I'd love it. And unlike the last time I went to the Hall of Fame, I won't find out that he's just died as I get home, because he's already dead. Dolph Ziggler versus Cesaro opened up Hell in a Cell, which took place on Sunday night. I think this was the perfect example of an absolutely grand pay-per-view.
Neil, at this point, you could probably turn off my microphone, because I don't have anything to say for the next hour of the show.
I think you must, because otherwise, will I just send you home?
Yeah, please.
Okay, Dolph Ziggler versus Cesaro in 2 out of 3 falls match. It was 2 straight falls. Ziggler won the first one within 3 minutes. After a roll-up, Cesaro attempted a giant swing and went into it, and then the zigzag for the pin. So basically, turning the 2 out of 3 falls formula on its head, in a sense. I guess if you're going to be a pessimist, you'd kind of say, or you're going to be down on it, you'd kind of say, well, what was the point to do 2 out of 3 falls? I thought it was fine, and I thought for the time allocated that they did well. I would have liked a longer match.
This will teach Cesaro not to come out in the media and say that he doesn't want to see John Cena and Randy Orton for the 5 minutes of time, won't it?
It has to be it, doesn't it?
If he wasn't being sent a message on Sunday, he certainly was on Monday.
We'll get there.
Yeah, match was okay. Probably 2.5, 2 3/4 stars.
Triple H, Kane, and Stephanie were with Randy Orton backstage.
Triple H came.
Triple H, Kane, and Stephanie and Randy were backstage. And Orton came in and he was going beluga about Seth taking him out on Raw. He didn't feel the need to go to SmackDown and go beluga about this, but then again, maybe he wasn't booked. They said, take your aggression out on John Cena later tonight.
I'm not booked, Terry.
What's his fucking name?
Dennis Stamp.
Dennis Stamp and his trampoline.
Can I just tell, in case, I'm sure a lot of people who listen to this podcast will never have heard the story, because it's quite obscure. You'll remember it. One of the greatest stories, probably the greatest story I've ever heard that
Lance Storm tell.
Curmudgeonly Lance Storm tell was on a podcast recently. He was probably about a year, 18 months ago. He was at like an autograph signing wrestling convention kind of thing, you know, with a bunch of guys, and he shared a limo with Dennis Stamp to the venue. And on the way, Lance was trying to talk shop to him, you know, and Dennis Stamp kind of like pointed at the limo driver and said, I don't think he's smart to the business, and like cut Lance off. So Stamp is like protecting the biz in 2013. Just when I heard that story, because if anyone remembers Dennis Stamp from the movie, he was already a cartoon character. But you know,
for those of you who don't know, Dennis Stamp was the special referee in Beyond the Mat, who we saw doing
I'm the special partner.
He was doing weights on his trampoline, because you never know when that phone's gonna ring.
Yeah.
Fucking brilliant.
I'm not booked, Jerry.
Nikki and Brie had their first one-on-one match.
I want you to come.
Of this feud. They'd had a one-on-one match on ECW. Did you know that?
Oh yeah, when they were doing the thing with the Matadores and Miz and Morrison, and they were split up. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, they split them up for like a week.
Okay, this was okay. This was fine.
Yeah, it was funny. The previous match I thought was like 2.5, 2 3/4, but I was disappointed in it.
Yeah.
This was probably 2 1/4, 2.5, and I was impressed by it because of where my expectations were.
Sure, I think everybody's the same.
And I'll be honest with you, about 60 seconds in, I thought to myself, they have done the same things Stephanie and Brie did. They've worked out this match.
Oh yeah.
And so it's tight. And to be honest, they looked. It's one thing to have your spots down, right? But their work, like their was snug and tight, you know.
Well, I can only imagine, and I'd like to hope that they're enough of wrestling fans and perhaps integrated enough into the business that they probably have talked about what they do if they had a one-on-one match. And they've enough people backstage to help them, including their better halves. Mm. So, the finish saw... I'm
surprised to hear you describe John as Nikki's better half. I didn't think he held him in such a size team.
I guess you're right. He's a horrible person. And I watched Total Diva, so I know. But Rack Attack led to a yes lock reversed, Nikki got to the ropes and then hit Brie with another Rack Attack to make Brie her personal assistant for 30 days. We got a segment backstage later on where she had a smoothie ready for her that Nikki unceremoniously...
Listen, you take a break here because I need to talk.
Unceremoniously dropped over her head. There we go.
You know what he sounded like? He sounded like Jimmy Bomber from South Park.
Jimmy who?
Jimmy Bomber. You know the kid who goes...
Oh yeah. I think that's what I was probably going for.
You mentioned Total Divas there, and I must mention, because we watched it this week.
This was the last, or this was Eva's wedding.
Season.
Tits galore in that dress. Huh?
Oh, Jesus Christ. I was sitting there like, listen, I have nothing against fake breasts, but at your wedding, you might want to cover up a little bit.
I was at Access and I saw her and Jonathan walk out of the backstage to...
Is he as big as he looks?
He's pretty damn big, yeah. Walk up to... His personal trainer. Walked up to their autograph area, and she was wearing...
Was he autographing?
No, he just walked up with her to kind of hold her phone or whatever. And... I'm not joking. And she was wearing like a black dress. It was one of those black dresses that like came down over the front in a halter neck, but the sides were completely exposed. Yeah. And the sheer amount of her breast I saw that up close, I was just like, take my money, Access. Take my money.
I'm not an Eva Marie guy. I think she's pretty much just dark hair, but I think the red hair is...
She's legitimately the most attractive woman they've probably ever had, in my opinion. But her personality kills me.
She's the most attractive
I'm
person
a
they've ever
dark
had.
haired kind of. I think so.
Layla L.
I love Layla, but I think in general. But listen, I'm a dark haired guy. I think her red hair is incredible.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Like
I don't.
She's like Jessica Rabbit.
What's wrong with that?
You know, Marshall, ladies and gentlemen.
Buzz for editing.
But listen, on Total Divas,
Yeah.
is it just me, or does Natalia come off like a total fucking heel, and you just want poor TJ to have a break?
She doesn't come off like a heel as much as she comes off unbalanced.
Listen, do you know what happened, Neil? Right? I can't believe I'm getting so worked up about a work show.
It's not work.
TJ is sitting there with his fucking headphones on, minding his own business at Raw, and then he comes up to scream at him for having arguments with her. It's like,
I know.
what the fuck?
The best thing ever.
Actually-
TJ comes across very passive, I suppose, on the show.
Passive aggressive kind
But
of.
the best thing ever was when they did this thing where they were at dinner and the Bellas were drunk and trying to get them back together,
Yeah.
get them back on good terms.
Mhm.
And TJ was like just saying, lads, don't even bother.
Yeah.
She's out of her mind.
Yeah.
And she goes, you remind me of TJ. You remind me of your mother right now. And TJ goes, you remind me of your
father.
I was like, so good. Like, because she knows how bad that would be.
Whenever I think of Jim Neidhart, I think of the Jim Neidhart that beat Jay Lethal on TNA Impact in 2010 for no reason
When
apparently.
I think of Jim Neidhart, I think of DX humiliating him after Montreal.
Did you remember the Heart and Soul DVD they made in 2010? Just after Brett came back. It's
Was
about
that the
whole-
one about the family?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Remember Jim sitting there in his he's wearing a shirt but he's like so round and he's just sweating the whole time.
Oh man, did you ever see the shoot interview they both did for
Oh, God.
RF?
This was when Brett was still in his
And
hardcore bitter stage.
Jim is like red
Sweating.
sweating, and he just keeps like kind of mouthing what Brett's saying and touching his beard and being like. And this was just before. Do you remember he got arrested because he constantly he was knocking around to all his neighbours' house asking them for pills?
Oh, I didn't.
Do you get arrested?
But I do remember seeing a photo of him in a wrestling convention in the last couple of years where he was just in shorts and he had no top on. Like,
Yeah. I remember that too. When I actually WrestleMania just gone as well. I went to WrestleCon and him and Brett were doing a signing. And
that's a WrestleCon if ever I've heard.
Oh,
of.
yeah. And it was the same kind of deal where like Brett was like completely together, engaging with the fans, and Jim was kind of sitting back with shades on, like sweating bullets, like just looking at his feet.
Was he,
and looking
can I
around.
ask you something? Was he holding Brett's phone?
Okay, so we had the Dust Brothers against the Usos for the 7,000th time. Do you know
Oh,
what,
God.
Ken? For me, this was a fine match, but yeah, I found it very hard. We
This
had
is-
people over, but I found it extra hard to kind of.
I couldn't
I'm
care
going to be
less.
reviewing this for a
This
podcast.
was
kind of.
2 stars to me.
Yeah.
And it's like this same match a month ago is probably 3.5, and it's someone the stat is they've had 9 in
Yeah.
a month, either 6-man tags or tags against each other. So it's just hard to care.
Goldust hit his finish for the win. The crowd actually were quite into this match, surprisingly. Now I've got a little bit to say about this match. The first Hell in Cell of the night, John Cena versus Randy Orton. I was delighted to see this in the middle of the card because I knew Seth and Ambrose were headlining, which then led me to think
and
of this
gentlemen.
incredible question I had.
Okay, go on.
Well, I'll wait
Oh,
till
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
get
yeah.
to that in a minute. But what were you going to say?
I was just, when you mentioned John Cena and Randy Orton, I was going to say, ladies and gentlemen, Kenny Murphy has left the building.
Okay, so very good. All right, so they tried. They did the WWE formula, where they built up, used a bit of plunder, and did a lot of kick out of each other's finisher. Cena won clean with, I believe, his 3rd AA. So they didn't have Randy tap. This is the WWE mentality of he's about to turn so he can afford a loss. But when you have him running around already RKOing Paul Heyman and a fresh match with Brock Lesnar on the horizon, I don't know why you don't have him beat John Cena and turn face. That's just my opinion. I don't know if you agree with that. In terms of the match itself, I think it felt exactly like the perfectly laid out Pat Patterson kick out of each other's finishers kind of template they've taken from over the years. But I think the match leading up to it and the fact it was Cena and Orton again made it redundant, and I don't think it pulled off the way they wanted it to.
What would you have given this a star rating, or did you?
I'd say it was about 3.5, 3.25.
See, I think I read a 3 3/4 review there today. This is a 2-star match to me. I just think I could not care less.
Would you have had Randy go over for Brock?
Absolutely, yeah.
Heated him up all the way. Use the internet stuff with him RKOing people out of nowhere. Do the stuff they did with Sean, where you have him, RKOing stage hands in the back out of nowhere.
Yes, and you can afford to have him beat Rollins next month or whatever in December if you want on the way to the Royal Rumble.
Sure.
And because I don't want to see another Cena Lesnar match, because they're already kind of booking themselves into corners of that, so now they're going to be booking themselves into corners again. So it's just no good. I was frustrated because there were 9 matches on this card, and in 5 of them people kicked out of finishes.
Wow.
Which that bothers me in itself. But it particularly bothered me because I just knew when Cena hit the second FU and jumped into the cover, he did. Normally when someone's kicking out, he does a thing where he hits the FU, gives it a couple of seconds, gets the cover, okay? Mm-hmm. He has this thing where it's quite patterned, where he hits the second one and jumps on top of him and covers him, gets the pin. But now he's even overexposed that spot to where I think he had matches with Punk, where Punk kicked out of 2 of them. I can't remember, I think there was somebody else. But I never bought the finish until the finish. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I thought the spot where Orton turns an RKO into or turns a attitude adjustment into an RKO.
Oh, that was very good, actually.
See, I didn't think so because I just thought it just exposed that basically it's the same bump. Do you know what I mean?
I can see what you're saying.
Because if you look at the replay, it's just like it's
we might as well get into a running the ropes argument if we're going to think of it like that. I enjoyed those.
No, I know what you mean, but they showed a specific replay and like. Randy just basically takes the exact same bump as he normally would, and he tries to get his arm close to Cena's neck. It's just it just felt a bit like, because the announcers, if you notice, didn't call it. They didn't even know there was an RKO.
They didn't get it.
So that's how it wasn't like. It's one thing to do, say the what the Evan Bourne spot where he
450.
Yeah, like
that's
an extreme one, or but this was just too close to it. But like I said, there was very little chance these guys had to make me like their match, and they worked very hard, but I still didn't like their match.
Cena eyed Paul Heyman after the match as he was on the experts panel for the pre and post show.
Gave him the eye, didn't you?
He gave him the old eye. Big Show and Mark Henry were backstage. He said he was going to beat Russo for him and America. Okay, so Sheamus and Miz for the IC title. This was pretty much comedy. Mizdow was taking so many bumps on the outside every time that Miz bumped, so I found that very entertaining. We had Sheamus win after botched interference, kind of via bro kick, and then Mizdow came in and started selling along with the Miz. Sheamus picked up the Miz, did the YMCA with his arms, and Mizdow of course had to follow in suit. The crowd were really into that at the end, but it's just, I look at these two guys and I think that's fine, have them like that, turn Mizdow. But I look at Sheamus and I still think
he's got to be hard in a heel. I actually could see. I don't know if this is where they're going. I think you could get something out of a run of Mizdow, whatever you want to call them as a team, almost in the Team Hell No spot where they're kind of tweeners, but they're kind of faces, and have them go up against the Dust Brothers, and you could probably get a couple months out of it. And if you want to build to a split where Miz goes back heel, that's fine. Or if it takes off, you can have them win the tag titles, because the tag titles are in a spot now where they don't mean anything again, whereas maybe a year ago they meant something. So, but I would keep this act together, and I would be hesitant to break it up too quick.
My friend did have a suggestion about breaking them up pretty quick, and I thought it was hilarious with the idea that in this match, that basically they just had Mizdow copying Miz as usual, to the point where by fluke, I can't remember what movie suggested, but by fluke it ended up that the referee was like staring at kind of Sandow's legs, and Sandow had Sheamus pinned.
I see.
And they did a WCW and had Sandow win the belt instead of Miz.
Okay.
I thought that would have actually been pretty good.
Okay, yeah.
Because what else are they doing? Big Show versus Rusev. Rusev, of course, won clean. He's actually going into a program with Sheamus next, per SmackDown spoilers.
This match was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, I think the Raw match was better.
Yeah, and I think he's had better matches with a few people. He's quite plodding, and the matches are getting old.
For me, it's going to be one of those cases I see that when he does lose, I don't see much for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of like Umaga after his first... Umaga kind of... He heated up again a bit later on, but at first, when he has first lost to Cena, he really dropped.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it's probably going to be the same thing at WrestleMania.
Do you think that's where they're going?
Yeah. Sure, what else would you have seen at WrestleMania?
I don't know, but then again, my brain is saying it doesn't sound like big enough for Cena at WrestleMania, but I would have said the same thing about Wrestling Wild Mercy last year's WrestleMania. We all thought that was never going to happen, and so it did.
They teased Henry being involved in the finish, but they didn't do the turn until the next night.
That, to me, was a big mistake. I don't mind not doing it in front. I get the idea of doing the turn on Raw where there's more people, but it felt the storyline was that the turn was going to involve Rusev.
Yes.
And they're just getting this. First of all, why did they get a tag team championship match?
We'll get to that.
And second of all, it just felt so. Basically, he turned on him because Show blind tagged him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, we'll get to that. It was pretty wacky. All right. Next, we had AJ versus Paige for the Divas title. Hopefully, their last match. AJ retained with a Black Widow. The finish saw. I don't know if they were meant to do this or not, but the finish saw AJ sweeping Paige's leg when she was standing on the barrier, and she took just the most grotesque bump in the sense that it looked like she killed herself, rolled into the ring for the Black Widow, and that be that. Paige then slapped Alicia Fox after the match and walked out. The main event was Seth Rollins versus Dean Ambrose in a Hell in a Cell match. I put this question to the audience I had over for the show, and we couldn't get it. I'll give you my train of thought, though. My question was, when was the last time a pay-per-view was headlined by two guys in a singles match who had never headlined a pay-per-view in a singles match before? So two fresh guys in a singles match who never. I started thinking to myself. I got as far as Bigelow and Lawrence Taylor. I was like, okay, there's definitely one, and I was like, there's no way there hasn't been one since then. But I struggled. Now you got one from a SmackDown only pay-per-view.
Yeah, which was Rey Mysterio and Booker T. But again, we debated. I don't know if that counts because Booker would have main evented, I believe, in WCW against Steiner.
Oh, there's no I believe about it. Yeah, no, definitely. So, if we're saying Booker doesn't count, then there has to be something in between. 94.
No, see, the thing is, I keep thinking of JBL title defenses, but obviously his first match was JBL Eddie. So
and Eddie had done Brock a few months earlier.
It's a unique situation, but then again, it's not like these guys. I know that they hadn't wrestled singles, but they had been in pay-per-view main events.
Plenty,
before.
actually.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
So no, I know it is a bit of a trick question, but interesting enough. It's just for me. Everybody
so fresh.
Exactly, that was the point. But people were really, really angry about this finish, a lot more than I was. But we'll get to it. It opened up with Dean getting into the ring and then saying to the camera, "We're all going to die tonight." He climbed up the SL. Seth came out with the New Stooges and told them to go up and get Dean. They went up. Dean,
I like the New Stooges, by the way.
Oh, I love them. They're going to be wrestling in the main event Survivor Series.
Are they?
Yeah.
Really?
It's going to be Seth, Kane, and those two against Cena, the Usos, and Dolph. And then Randy's going to be a wild card.
Are you saying this as in this is just what you believe?
Well, okay. Even if Randy is on the Team Authority one last time, that's still three people. So I can imagine it being a five-man.
Yeah, but I see them plucking two heels from mid-card, maybe.
Who can?
I don't know. Maybe the what was it called? The Harper family. The Harper family will be back.
I doubt that.
The Ascension. I don't know. It doesn't
fuck off.
It doesn't strike me, but I know what you're saying. But this is fucking Jamie
It's
Noble.
The only time we'll get them in the ring, they'll be this.
I just see them in storyline looking at they're just agents. You know what I mean? Wherever they are, I don't know. Maybe it'll happen, but I don't think so.
So they were beating the shit out of with kendo sticks by the hands of Dean Ambrose. Seth blindsided him. He got up that cage pretty damn quick, didn't he?
Seth?
Yeah,
he did. Yeah.
He's a great man.
All that CrossFit.
He got up so quick on Raw. The week leading into Hell in a Cell. Do you remember the camera just couldn't show the replay of him curb something around? The next thing he was just up there having a buzz.
Yeah.
So they did the Shawn Michaels spot where they were both on the middle girder,
which is higher up now than it was then.
Exactly.
10 feet rather.
Yeah. Dean took the bump so perfectly. Seth killed himself.
I don't know. So it didn't. They basically were both standing side by side, one headbutted the other, and they both just took flat back bumps through the two tables.
I wouldn't call Seth a flat back. I call it more a shoulder.
I think I focused more on Dean because Dean's looked. I think it looked like the wind was knocked out of him.
I thought Seth killed himself. Go back and watch it. One thing about that camera angle they kept re-showing from the ground.
Didn't show Seth very well.
Well, it was on the side of Dean Ambrose, but it was very unflattering. I saw a camera angle from a tier, phone camera angle, and the guy who took it seemed to be, whether it was his hand or his actual seat, dead on with them.
I get you, yeah.
And it looked gigantic.
Yeah, and there was that video. Remember the video of Seth doing a dive from a balcony in one of those matches against Evolution?
Yeah.
There was a fan cam of that was much better than any shot WWE had.
Oh, you're right, aren't you? Yeah, I forgot about that one. Okay, so that was leading basically into the match, restarting in the cell, kind of Taker Foley-esque. They used a lot of plunder. They had a good back and forth, getting all their signature spots in. The finish saw Dean Ambrose take 2 cinder blocks from under the ring to reenact the curb stomp that took him out of action for 6 weeks. Just as he was about to hit it, the lights went out. The aforementioned hologram appeared. Now, what was this hologram supposed to be?
Tupac. Biggie Smalls.
After the...
It was a genie in a fucking bottle,
It was
Neil.
Joe Dolan in Tralee.
And you know what? My interest in this fucking pay-per-view evaporated at the same time as the fucking genie.
So the smoke evaporated, light came back on. Bray was back. What did he do to him? Oh, he gave him the rock bottom thing.
The light is permanently off in Vince McMahon's head, apparently.
He gave him the rock bottom thing. Seth
just
got the
near
pin.
Nagy didn't drop with him, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the pin.
And and then he hit the Sister Abigail's
But he
kiss
not
for the
even
finish.
hit his finish.
No, because he had to hit the finish at the end, didn't he?
But like he
Of
says,
course he
just
could have hit the
so
finish.
weak.
Of course he could have. But anyway, there you go. So obviously you were deathly against this finish.
Furious.
What would you rate the match?
3 stars.
Would a clean finish for Dean?
4 stars, probably.
There you go. That says it all. Okay, so we will. Do you want to do podcasts or Raw?
I don't want to do Raw at all, Neil. So let's
Okay,
just
let's get. Okay,
quick.
great. Monday Night Raw, we had the Authority come out, and this was a great segment. They did there's actually good Raw, I thought. The Authority.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
I was grand.
I'm leaving.
The Authority you've trended on
Do my
enough
gimmick
times.
again.
The Authority came out and basically put over Seth as the future of the company. Randy came out and he took complete and utter umbrage to this even. Umbrage, yeah. He came out and he cut the best promo of his career. He went absolutely apeshit about how Seth wasn't the future at all, and that, to be honest, the reason he lost to John Cena is because he was still smarting from the curb stomp. I love that because it leads their feud, and it's just it protects Randy if they are turning him. And they kind of got in a scuffle. Triple H broke it up, started giving hell to Randy, saying that he won't do this right now, right here. And out of nowhere, Randy hit the RKO on Seth, and Seth sold it better than you'll ever see anybody.
Okay, lot to say about this segment. You know the way we talked about how Austin would have told Vince to go where to go if he offered him the hologram finish in 1997?
Yeah.
I guarantee you they scripted a back and forth between Seth and Randy for about 5 minutes here, blah, blah, blah. And then Randy just said, no. See, I'd be fucking furious. So this is what I'd do. And if you want to light me up as a babyface, this is where we need to go.
I hope
guarantee you he pushed back
well,
on
look,
this.
Ken, I don't know if you're right, but if you are...
Hang on. When does
only
Randy
leads to
ever
good thing.
deliver dialogue this well? Ever.
That's why I think it isn't... you did just think it's because he's turning face, and he knew it was...
I just feel like he definitely... There's no way... I'm not accepting. I refuse to accept this writing crew was capable of doing this on their own.
He made it an excellent segment, and one thing I'll say is...
Particularly because, by the way... Didn't he mention about his going to anger management in 06? I guarantee he did.
For real?
Yeah.
Which I didn't like because that means nothing else is real. But
all
anyway,
fake.
The point is that I wasn't huge, especially because I didn't want Dean to go back down the card. I wasn't huge on Randy being number 2 babyface or number 3 or whatever. I thought it would affect Bryan, and in a way Reigns badly. But the fact of the matter is that if he's going to be this kind of babyface, I'm all for it.
Yeah, but we won't get that over.
That's
the thing about the main event.
Hold on. The move is more over now for some reason because of the internet than it's ever been.
This is such a wrestling bubble thing. It's not.
I think the move is very over. Well, here's what's going to happen.
If Randy Orton draws any money, you're right.
Yeah, obviously.
Okay, can I say? You know the WWE had their press conference today, not press conference, their press call, whatever, after their financial results. One of the things they were pushing is that they have 420 million, not Twitter followers, but they've reached 420 million people through Twitter.
Sure.
Now. And like that's and this is this big thing, and this is a wrestling bubble thing. I guarantee you.
That's not what I'm saying.
No, but I just guarantee you, Randy Orton's babyface turn will lead to no increase in ratings and no increase in pay-per-view buy rates. So if you're telling me that it gets a bigger reaction vaguely, then because there's 100 smart fans who've been watching RKO Vines all week, maybe.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the RKO Vines are going to bring people into wrestling. I'm saying that potentially people might be interested in tuning in to see this guy that they're seeing all over the internet. My point is that it's probably going to spur them on to be a lot more creative with Randy.
Wonderful, because their creative is great.
In terms of the way that he'll use the move and he can get the move super duper over because he'll be playing up to this whole thing.
I reckon, right, the finish of his match with Seth, which will come in December, TLC, I think he'll be just about to get the finish. The lights will go out. We'll hear Waylon Mercy talking in tongues, right? Randy will RKO the Genie and then get rolled up for the finish.
And you're telling me that one draw. Gold and Stardust against Big Show and Mark Henry for the tag team titles. Inexplicably getting a title shot out of nowhere, even though they've teamed about half a dozen times in the last 6 months. Basically, Henry just got it for them somehow. He had some stroke. So he turned heel because Big Show slapped him in the back and Henry said it hurt. They went back and forth. Show did it a second time, and when Show had the tag team titles all but one, Henry gave him the world's strongest slam thrice and then gave him a big splash. The crowd were chanting, "That's what I do." The crowd were chanting one more time. Mega over is this Big Show as a babyface.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. just the people just love him so much so they're chanting one more time.
Could you not have done it the other way around?
Done the turn the other way around?
Yeah.
No, because I love Mark Henry as a heel.
Big Show's going for the record
Mark Henry
anyway.
should be the main event of WrestleMania as a heel. I fucking love him. That run he had in 2010, Neil. Listen, I'm at the point I don't give a flying fuck about this product.
Listen to me.
It's garbage. It's shite. It's swill. If you were watching it rather than just listening to us, you're a fool, okay? They should put Mark Henry in the main event because he amuses me. And at this point, I know that they're not going to book anything well, so they may as well just book the show to amuse me. So that means Mark Henry in main events and Booker T shucky ducky quacking, baby.
First off, the network numbers that
This is what this company's doing to me.
First off, the network numbers you're so upset about
Fire me!
aren't going to.
I'm already fired.
The network numbers you're complaining about aren't going to look very good if it only has one subscriber. That being you. And
that's what I do, Neil.
Yeah, I know that's what you do. And secondly, nobody's going to listen to the podcast if you're the only person watching wrestling. Now,
we suffer so you don't have to.
Yeah, there you go. Michael Cole introduced Roman Reigns via satellite to do a little bit of an update. He was a lot better than he was the first time. Somebody had obviously told him that this is an entertainment company.
Listen, right, I have something to say here. Somewhere along the way, some cod, right, Bill, has convinced the IWC that a wrestler is a good promo if he can deliver badly written lines in a relatively competent, only semi-wooden fashion, which this was, because he was fucking wooden, right?
I never said it was good, I said it was better than the first.
Roman Reigns couldn't cut a fucking promo to save his life. A promo is supposed to be a promotional interview to draw people in, to make them want to watch you on television and pay to see you at the house and pay to see you on the pay-per-view on the network for $9.99. Nothing this man does will do that. AJ
defeated Alicia Fox after the match. Paige gave her a friendship bracelet and then bet her up until Jerry Lawler made the save. He can't help but get involved in this feud. So hopefully we're moving on now from Paige and
AJ ever existing.
But who does AJ go against now? Nikki, I presume.
Nikki at Survivor Series. Yeah.
Nice. John Cena came out to do a...
By the way, though, the fact that they've so publicly said now about how the Total Divas cast and have the championship kind of kills this dead. That would explain also why Paige and AJ have been married to each other for 6 months.
Oh,
why
absolutely.
they're moving away from it when Paige is joining their cast.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. John Cena came out and he was doing his usual thing now where he just talks about the local sports team that's doing well rather than the heel talking about the local sports team that isn't doing well. He was just nanning on forever about him and Orton and just talking shite about going against Lesnar, and this time he's going to win. Stephanie came out and, much like Paul Heyman did on the lead up to Night of Champions, begged him to go to the dark side. And they tried to will on a Cena sucks chant, and the one time that they did, they didn't get it. So this didn't really work. It kind of fell on its ass. Triple H, however, did come out and cut a great promo on Cena saying that his future isn't bright if it isn't with the Authority, and he's going to have to pick his own Survivor Series team to go against them. The Authority always wins. So anytime you get Triple H cutting a fiery promo on someone like Cena, it feels important. It's good for Hunter to have these kind of moments because he can do them, and it's about as excited as one could be for John Cena versus Authority Survivor Series match.
I thought it was crap.
Did you think Hunter was good?
I had no interest in what any of them had to say. So.
The Usos defeated Miz and Miz Dow. The story of this was basically they did a switcheroo, playing off that they're actually identical, unlike Miz and Miz Dow. He's shaved that fucking thing on his face. That's the issue here. That's what the Usos are trying to tell them.
The fucking thing in my face.
We both
pot kettle.
Yeah, I've got such a big one at the moment. I also have a pretty long beard.
I had a meeting today with my potential new employer, and I had an interview last week, and
he saw the cut of you, and he just said,
"No, I was encouraged by my current manager several times. He has been for months to trim the fella, and I can't do it, Neil. Like, I just can't.
I know.
gonna let it go. I did trim for Lanzarote, but I'm gonna let it get woodsy now. But it'll take me a lot longer to get woodsy.
Shame tomorrow for my Halloween costume.
Get woodsy, he says after Neil says he's heard him.
I got a shave.
What's your Halloween game?
Myself and Claire dressing up as Gambit and Rogue from the X-Men comics.
I don't know who those people are.
Trust me.
I've seen the X-Men films, but I don't know who those two are.
It involves a clean-shaven gentleman.
Okay, yeah.
And I'm also from New Orleans, so I went there doing some... what's it called when an actor goes to...
Method.
Yeah! There we go. I know one actor gentleman who listens to this podcast quite regularly, and he's probably thinking I'm a big fucking idiot. Well, you're right, Mike. Next, we had Kane confronting Dolph Ziggler. Oh, sorry, we had Dolph and Cena backstage. They were chatting about being part of Team Cena. Then Kane came back and confronted Dolph and said that it was an affront to the authority. An act of aggression, I think was the way he put it. So he booked himself against Dolph for later.
I thought... Right, so this was all based on the fact that we saw Cena and Ziggler shaking hands, right? We don't know what was said, though, right?
You think it was kind of... They were talking about Nikki, right?
Yeah. I think what was happening here was he was like, listen... We all cool, bro, and Ziggler was like, "Yeah, I suppose we're cool about that." But
that thing
I think there was still some heat though as well because do you know this sex scene they talked about on Total Divas that John Cena had to film in a movie?
Sure.
Do you know who that was with?
No.
It was with a lady named Amy Schumer, who was a comedian who was also an ex-girlfriend of Dolph Ziggler's.
That's right.
Small fucking world. So I think Ziggler was kind of trying to say, listen. I get the you're with Nikki, fair enough, but listen, don't be shitting everywhere I've eaten, bro,
That's why.
So I think that's what it was about.
That's why they're putting them together. It's just to fuck with Ziggler more.
Probably, yeah. And then Kane, of course, buried Ziggler on SmackDown.
Okay, Hook came out in his pink and cut the most 80s wrestling promo when it comes to a delicate...
Susan G. Coleman.
a delicate topic. He called it Coleman-mania. He called it...
We're gonna beat the breast cancer, dude. And what you gonna do? What WWE, the Susan G. Coleman Foundation, blah 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 blah. Just Hulk. They really need to find something for him, or don't have him on TV.
He said so many Jacks, but Cena started saying Jack too as well.
The problem is,
who's Jack?
But here's the problem: like he should mean something for ratings, but I'm sure he won't because...
No, he won't.
It's funny, when he came back into WWE, he said, TNA had me on TV every week, which was a mistake on their behalf. And I was sitting there thinking to myself, yeah, I'm sure it was a mistake when you were getting 35 grand per fucking shot. But anyway, yeah, and he was saying WWE won't do that, but WWE have used him dreadfully.
He brought some breast cancer survivors into the ring and got them to do the pose down with him, and it was a very nice sentiment. I know it's not exactly going to do anything, but it's fine to use him for that, I suppose. Next out,
little fact for you about the Susan G. Komen stuff. It's 20% of the Susan G. Komen merch goes to Susan G. Komen.
Ooh,
but only 20% of the money Susan G. Komen generates goes toward finding a cure. The rest of it is all PR and
sure.
So basically, it's 20 of 20, so it's 4% of
t-shirt sales.
Yeah, so if you buy a $24 t-shirt, fuck all, basically. About $1 and change is going to Susan G. Komen. You actually like that pink Hulkamania shirt, though, by the way.
No.
I love... me, pink is my favourite colour.
Do you know what hurts me about it? Is that when they show the graphic of Hogan coming out, it's clearly just a picture of Hogan and they've superimposed the t-shirt pink instead of red as before they actually got one on him.
I see.
And it's like hot pink.
It should be pink with Hulkamania in black, but I guess Brett would have... They should really bring Brett in for fucking... Susan G.
I guarantee you Brett
will be on a podcast.
With his hand in his
Brett will be in a podcast and what's going... no one ever... wore the pink and black in October like Bret the Hitman Hart did.
I know. Okay, so let me see. Bo Dallas came out next and he issued an open challenge. Ryback came out in full babyface mode from 2012. He had to Feed Me More at the start of his music.
Excuse
me.
He had
the pyro
Were you referring to the big guy?
I'm referring... Who now has that sprayed onto his... I love that little moniker, so I'm really happy with that.
As you know, Neil, I had a little... hard on for Ryback.
I told you you read your mind. I was right.
Was it 2012?
Yeah. I told you were crazy.
It's just, feed me more. Do you know what I mean? Who can't relate to that?
So, Ryback, he also has his pyro noise back. I don't think he has pyro.
Wake up.
He has pyro noise and no pyro.
Oh, that's right, actually. He puts his arms down. There's a big noise, but there's no pyro.
No.
That's very smart.
Nailed Pyro. He just killed Bo, and he's back. And you know what? Why not? What else are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, so we had Dean Ambrose versus Cesaro. It didn't happen because Dean came to the ring and just killed Cesaro. He then asked... Bad news for Cesaro, we touched on that earlier. He asked Bray what the fuck he was up to. Bray came on screen, and this more than ever was a promo I just did not understand. He said they were the same person. Is that right?
This is where you and I texted. We like to not really discuss things until the show, but I noticed that you didn't hate the Hell in a Cell finish much to me, and my problem with it was Ambrose in one night could have been underscored and put in a position where he really could have started heading toward the main events, okay?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think you could have put him against Lesnar at WrestleMania if you kept up the momentum he had. In one night, they cut his legs off so badly that he ends up in, let's be honest, Orton will be ahead of him, Reigns will be ahead of him, Cena will be ahead of him, Bryan will be ahead of him. So eventually he'll be number 5 babyface, okay? And what's worse is you saddled him with Waylon because... What we saw before the end of the Jericho feud was the wheels really came off the Bray Wyatt push. Everyone saw through his promos. Everyone realised he says things in a funny kind of interesting way, but really he's talking hat.
Sure. He's also wearing one.
And his matches, for the most part, are pretty meh. You know what I mean? He had one good match with Jericho out of 3. He had one good match with Cena out of 3. Mm-hmm. And he's been protecting booking. He's had 7 matches with Jericho, Cena, and Bryan this year. He won 4 of them.
Sure,
which for a heel is strong, and it's just gonna weigh Ambrose down. And the biggest thing of all, of course, was I knew, you knew, everyone on Earth knew there was going to be no reason why Bray Wyatt did this, and we got no reason on Raw. We will get no reason.
The reason I wasn't upset with the finish at Hell in a Cell as much as everybody else was because I knew they were turning Orton, and I would, rather be surprised than just have Dean lose because I couldn't see them. Because obviously the idea, we knew the week before, the idea is Seth and Orton. So I knew it.
I do, but at the same time,
whatever.
Anyway, whatever it is, whatever.
Like if they weren't going to turn Orton and they did this finish, then I would have been pissed off.
I don't.
Dean spot.
There's no juice in Orton as a draw. You could have actually made money with Ambrose.
I'm just saying, I knew it was going to happen, so I was happy to be surprised. If there was an opportunity for Dean to excel and them not turn Orton, then I would have been pissed off. But I knew the opportunity for Dean had already gone. So that's why I wasn't as upset.
You would have been surprised if Rollins had won in 30 seconds with the curb stomp and a total squash. It doesn't mean it's positive.
Well, I wouldn't have liked that. I think that would have been worse. Nikki Bella versus Naomi. The story of this is Nikki has forced Brie to interfere, which she did, and Nikki ended up winning. Dolph Ziggler versus Kane. They had a long match. This, by Dolph standards, wasn't as good, but it was a Kane match after all. He beat Kane with a roll-up.
You can't have Kane working this gear.
He's wearing slacks, Ken. He's wearing slacks and a smile.
Short red hair. It's just, what?
He's got very strange hair.
It really is.
Is he still wearing his gimmick contact? I was thinking about this today because I'm wearing.
No, I noticed earlier in the year he wasn't at one point.
Yeah, I'm wearing gimmick contacts for the first time tomorrow because this costume, and I was like, does Kane still wear that gimmick contact? And was it the exact same gimmick contact Ray had, except just one? Anyway, main event was Seth Rollins versus John Cena in an absolutely brilliant match. Seth was fantastic. Cena was great. It was reminiscent of kind of Cena Cesaro main event in terms of the length. The finish saw Kane run in when Seth was in the STF in the middle of the ring, and then they had everybody run down.
This was so
except for
stupid.
Dean Ambrose and Randy Orton. They had everybody run down, and I guess what we were supposed to think, even though it wasn't really stated, was that they were all vying for a slot on either the Authority or Cena team for Survivor Series. Who was left in the ring that Cena destroyed? I think it was Heath Slater and Bo. And that was Monday Night Raw. Did you like that main event match?
I didn't watch it. That's the truth. I just
so
knew,
good.
I looked at it, it was 158 minutes into the show was starting, and I just knew 100% we're not getting a finish. So fast forward to the last 3 minutes of the match, we did get a finish.
Match itself was very good.
It looked like it was fine, but I just couldn't. I can't do 195 minutes of Raw. It drains my soul.
I would say though, it's as in terms of Raw main events this year goes, it was great.
Listen here, I have an announcement to make.
Okay.
To you as well as the world. For the next 3 weeks, I will still, unfortunately, dabble in modern day Raw. I'm also concurrently on our shows going to do a weekly recap, 5 minutes or so, of the same week's Raw from 20 years ago, 1994. Okay.
Fucking hell.
The last 3 in the run up to Survivor Series, and then you and I are going to review Survivor Series 1994.
Okay. Okay.
If you wish to, you can also watch the same Raws.
Okay.
But
all right. That's interesting. Good idea.
And also our classic review for next week, because we're not going to have a full one of Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Am I free to make a pick then?
Okay, it's going to be a hell of a long show with all this, but go ahead.
Is it though? We're going to have that much to say on Super Bowl?
Well, you've got this extra Raw and 2 classic reviews.
All right.
We're talking too much shop here. Let's get to the podcast. We'll talk about this off the air. Okay, let's get straight to Jim Ross then, because of that horrendous impression. Mark Madden was on the show last week. I hate Mark Madden. I hate Mark Madden even more after watching Super Bowl 2000. Mark Madden is the epitome of a fat, obnoxious internet mark. His name is also Mark. He's a cunt. The interview was all right. It was pretty shit because of Mark Madden. It wasn't great because
the Brian Pillman story was great.
The Brian Pillman story was the only good one. He told a story of Brian Pillman wanted his press pass so he could lock himself to the touchline.
He wanted Mark Madden's press pass for the Super Bowl in 1996 so that he could get on the field and handcuff himself to the post during the Super Bowl.
You understand it would have been him getting the Austin push if he'd done it.
Yes, that would have been some infamy. But then again, once the car wreck happened, I don't know. I think that still would have derailed his popularity.
Jim also had Jason Powell on, as you alluded to earlier, to review Hell in a Cell. Now, when it comes to the non-wrestling observer internet journalists, Powell is probably my favorite. He also has a good.
Is this Neil's POV we're getting here?
He also has a very good radio voice.
I'm not booked, Jerry.
He also has a very good radio voice, but he's all right, wasn't he?
Yeah, I kind of listened to the show, and the end of it, I was like, he didn't say anything, but, you know.
Roddy had Jesse on. I'm actually thinking about listening to this, because I can only imagine the kind of stories. But it's basically supposed he was an hour of blasting Hogan.
How much fucking coke was snorted in that 60 minutes?
Oh, man. They were just talking shit about Hogan, I hear.
Really, yeah?
Yeah.
I might have to listen to that one.
Wrestling Observer, we had 2 interviews with Jericho. Well, there's also an interview up actually with Ross now. I don't know. I know
Jericho, by the way.
One of the Jericho ones is free.
He's much less interminable when he's being interviewed.
Man, there's no comparison. The best thing to come out of the Jericho one, I don't know if it's on the free one, but you can go on to Page. You can go on to. You can go on to.
It was the first one that was free. The one where they talked not just wrestling, but a few after dark
spooky stuff. But if you go on some dubious sites, you'll be able to get the second one, and the second one had some really good stuff with Dave. It had the story about him and Punk having the idea of the tattoo.
When we were discussing the Vince stuff earlier on, Punk and Jericho wanted to do a segment on Raw where Jericho tattooed his initials on CM Punk.
For real.
For real, yeah. Which would have been such a heat angle.
Oh, man.
And Vince kiboshed it, which again just says everything.
Do you know what I like? Do you know what would have been so cool about this, besides just doing it? The replay value. And I don't just mean showing replays, but I mean the idea of, do you remember when they went to Punk and Jericho when Punk came back, a Payback or whatever that pay-per-view was, the one in Chicago last year? Just the idea of just like, you know, Jericho just pointing at it at the start of a promo, just pointing at it in silence, or the idea that every single match they have, you know, Jericho gets Punk in like an arm lock and just shows it off.
Yeah, and also there's the thing of, you know, they like to have their little highlight reel moments at the top of the show, or in their blurb, the 30-second then now forever. That's something that would be big enough that you could put it in there. You know what I mean? Like like that.
Just a shot of his arm. Steve Austin is just doing as usual. Basically, he's very busy at the moment, so he doesn't have guests.
Ric Flair on as well.
But he had Rick on today, and Rick sounded in great fettle. Actually, he was in really good form.
A few in, I'd say, at that stage.
Yeah, it was Saturday night, wasn't it?
I enjoyed his
talking about taking up golf.
They discussed who hated taking shots, and I always knew Brett hated taking the shots, but I didn't know Taker hated taking
I knew that story about Taker having 4 is allocated per night.
You have 4. I'm going to go back and watch the WrestleMania 18 match now. Maybe he took like 6 because it was WrestleMania. I love the idea of I just love the visual of Brett begging Flair not to chop him, because, you know, back then, you know, Brett was just getting the title, so I'm sure he was trying to be as kind of nice about it as possible. Yeah. But at the same time, you can just picture the two of them, can't you?
Oh, absolutely.
And Rick in his head thinking, this fucking asshole. But I did like when they were talking about Steve was asking him how he's feeling, and he said he felt fine, basically. And he said that this drives Brett mad because I guess Brett's not feeling too healthy these days. It's just the fact that they were talking, they was talking about Brett, and this, that there was a warmth to the tone, because it's, some of these flame wars just get so old when it's, Brett and Sean, and then Brett and Flair. All these kind of things.
Oh, they're pals now.
Flair and Hogan and Warrior, all those kind of things. It's just,
There's some stuff on MLW, an interview with somebody, and I can't remember what it was. But anyway, go to MLWradio.com. They've changed the layout of the website, and a lot of the content is still free. And now and again, you'll get some good stuff there. Jericho had Corey Taylor from Slipknot on. If you're a music fan, there's some interesting stories there about Corey Taylor and potentially being in other bands and stuff like that, and some funny road stories as well. There's an awful lot of shite though about ghosts. And the second interview Jericho had out this week was Sabu.
Oh yeah, I did listen. I fell asleep and I meant to go back and listen to it, but he was so dry.
Jericho said on the Observer shows that he had to really put on his working boots for that Sabu interview.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, he said he really had to try and be so engaging just to get the bare minimum out of Sabu. But he
was dull, wasn't he? Did he tell any stories?
I didn't get far either.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember it being like, ugh.
I would give podcast of the week to the Jericho interview on Figure 4W. That's free. And I would also give it to Austin's interview with Flair. It's about 40 minutes tucked away in the middle of the show. Skip the start and skip the end because Austin's just...
Skip Ted Fowler 361.
I can't...
On the Twitter!
I can't take Steve Austin talking about his janitor anymore.
I don't know. Some days I like it. Like, did you listen last week when he was talking about... Teddy sending his wife a photo of the rattlesnake?
Yeah.
That was great, you know what I mean? Cutting promos on him. But yeah, Teddy himself, the idea of Teddy, is kind of better than the reality. He's like Bray Wyatt in that sense, you know what I mean?
Suplex. All right, Ken, anything before we go?
No, let's get it rock and roll.
Okay, awesome. Well, listen, everybody, thank you very much for... listening to this week's show. And if you want to catch any of our archives for This Ain't Fake or our MMA show on Dublin City FM, you can do so by going to thisaintfake.com. We should have everything up there over the last few weeks. There's some missing shows. They should be up by tomorrow. If you want to listen to the Mixed Martial Arts show live, of course you can do so by tuning in to 102.3 FM at 4 o'clock this coming Sunday. So that's 102.3. Yes,
I was just going to say, and if there is anything that you particularly enjoy in our shows, put it in the comments under the video. And if there's anything you particularly want more of or less of, like if you want less of me screaming,
if you want less of Raw, that's what you want.
If you want less of Raw, please tell us. But no, genuinely, if there's anything you think is a positive or negative, if you enjoyed our off the beaten path banter, let us know as well.
Yeah, definitely. Today, wasn't there? And people who are consistently listening to the show, we're really happy, and we're really happy with the feedback that we do get privately. We don't mind you leaving it publicly either, because it actually generates an algorithm in Facebook where it'll stay up in people's feeds more, and people will kind of see it as well.
Neil, you just wanted to say algorithm on the podcast.
Oh, fuck off. On the MMA front as well, if you know people who like MMA and pro wrestling, or just one or the other, you can go to thisaintfake.com, click on the archive section, and then link people to the archives, and they can go with it what they will. There's a description of every show. If there's some classic moments in the last few years of mixed martial arts that we've covered on FM radio, and of course there's classic reviews as well that you can go back and listen to anytime. So again, thanks very much for the support. We'll be back on Sunday with MMA at 4 o'clock at 102.3 FM Dublin City, and we'll be back with This Ain't Fake, brother.
102.3.
Yeah, it's 103.2, isn't it?
Yeah. what a cluster.
I did that on the air the other day.
Man, it's too late. It's too late in the day here.
Yeah, I'm telling. It is actually very late. But you just find Dublin City FM online and stream it, because God knows.
Just subscribe.
There you go. Jerry Lawler will be here next week to plug it even more. Until then, from myself and Ken, see you soon.
Ciao.